All right. Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome, Whistlekick Martial Arts Radio. Today, joined by Sensei Nathan Chlumsky. Welcome to the show. We'll chat in just a moment. But for the audience, if you want to go deeper on this or any other episode, make sure you hit whistlekickmartialartsradio.com. I've got a bunch of links from Sensei here that we're going to drop in there. I know we're going to talk about some things that he does that you will want to check out after. So don't be afraid to miss that. And if you want to check out the things that we do and support our efforts, head on over to whistlekick.com. But right now, it's about you. Sensei, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Of course. Really do appreciate you coming on. And
I'm a big fan.
Well, I am honored. It's such a weird
Honor's
word.
all mine. Trust me.
If you've been listening to or watching the show for a while, you know what I've said often, that just, I just ended up in this spot. It wasn't really by choice. It's just weird things happen. And that's, I think if we look at how most people end up in martial arts, it wasn't very rarely does someone wake up and they say, I've never heard of this thing called martial arts. I'm going to go do martial arts, right? It's usually somebody either directly or indirectly pushed them into training, or they watched movies or TV. It seems to be one of those two. So I'm curious, which one are you?
Well, kind of a mix of both.
Okay.
I grew up in Larned, Kansas, which is a very small town of about 4,700 people. What makes the town is a state mental hospital that's been there since the 30s. And so if you're
probably
from
a
Larned,
joke or two in there that I'm going to leave alone, right?
They let me out on good behavior. Chances are, if you're from that town, you probably worked there. And I worked there. My dad worked there at one time. My mom, my grandparents. So that's kind of how it is. But I had a lot of friends as a young kid, but then once we got into school, those kids they were my friends outside of school, but they were bullying me in school.
What age are we talking here?
All the way up until high school.
So even starting at like 5-6 years old in kindergarten.
Yeah, about first grade on up.
Okay.
And they would push me around, call me names and everything. And my parents always told me, don't fight. If you fight, we're going to beat you. We're going to spank you, and so I grew up not fighting back. And so they took advantage of it because it made them look big and bad. And, I always loved the martial arts. I'd say when I was around maybe 4 or 5, I saw my first martial arts film on TV. And I don't remember what it was. I think it might have been like 10 Tigers of, or something like that. It wasn't, I don't think it was a Bruce Lee movie. It might have been, but I just thought, wow, that's so cool. That's awesome.
Was that something like one of your parents was watching?
No, it was just on TV. I was watching TV and it came on and I saw it and I was like, oh wow, that's awesome. And I was fascinated by the movements and everything else. And I wanted to train, but there wasn't really any schools around where I was. And as time went on, there was some schools, a small school around the area, a Taekwondo school, and I begged my parents, but they were afraid to get me in because they didn't think I would stick with it. And they didn't want to spend the money just to have me quit, because I had a cousin that he got into Taekwondo and he got close to his black belt and then he quit. And so I never got the chance to train. And I just kept watching. This was in the early 80s and late 70s, early 80s. And I started watching more and more martial arts flicks. Got watching Chuck Norris movies, and then Jean-Claude Van Damme came out, and Seagal, and the Karate Kid, of course, in '84, and all these movies, and I was fascinated with it, and but I was continuing to be bullied, even to the point where um, even school officials lied to my parents. They would pretend that they didn't know that the bullying was going on, and and uh, what have you, and that just went on all the way through high school, and I don't know if you're familiar with it was Book It. Uh, it was through in Kansas. We had it was called Book It, and it was put on through Pizza Hut, and you could purchase
Yes.
different books, and then you would get points and you get pizzas. And so when I was probably around the fifth, sixth grade, I purchased my very first learn how to do karate
You
book
have a karate book from back then.
back then.
I remember that book. I
And
remember seeing
not
that
very
book
thick,
on.
but
Yeah. Who's
um,
the author on that?
this was by Russell Kozuki.
Okay.
And $225 is the price.
Which
So
back then was a lot of money.
yeah, and I got it and reviewed it, and I remember one time this kid challenged me to a fight, and he was on the same bus route as mine. I was like, oh great, and so I was studying this book for a couple weeks, getting ready for the fight. And of course, I knew nothing about how to punch properly or stance or nothing. And I wound up, I got off the bus and we circled up to each other. And I was like, I'm going to get the first punch in, and then I'm going to take out running. I'm going to knock him down, and then I'm going to run. And it went just as planned. But little did I know there was a guy that crouched down behind me, where people
Oh.
would crouch down behind you, and
Mhm.
the other person would push you over. And I squared off and I threw the punch and I knocked the guy down. But because I didn't know proper stance or anything else, I fell back and fell back over the guy. But I immediately jumped up and I took out running. And that was kind of the introduction.
It's not a bad strategy, right? I
Yeah.
mean, even today, a lot of schools do what you got to do and then take off, right? Like
Yeah.
it's
And
ideal.
And of course, they chased me down and they caught me and they tried punching me, but I had so much adrenaline.
Mm.
They were hitting me in the stomach and it wasn't even phasing me. It was like, whatever. But as I got older, eventually I finally started kind of sticking up to myself. Around the eighth grade, my parents finally realized what was going on, and they said,
Mm.
hey, if it's self defense, that's a different story. And I still held back, but there was a couple times that I would stay on my ground. And then finally, around my junior year of high school, the bullying started tapering off. People started
Mm.
realizing that I was going to stand up to myself, and plus, I think everybody was starting to grow up a little bit, and they wasn't so interested in bullying,
Yeah.
and now a lot of those people are very good friends of mine now today, and I've forgiven them for what they did in the past. And I mean, we were all young, and now we're really good friends, and I'm proud of their accomplishments and what they've accomplished themselves. They got some good families and beautiful families, so I'm happy for them.
Can we talk about that for a moment?
Sure.
Because not only is something that I think incredibly powerful, your ability and willingness to forgive people who made such an impact. I mean, you can see the emotion as you're talking about your childhood here. I've talked about this a little bit on the show. You've done a far better job of forgiving the people who treated you poorly as a child than I have, and I suspect I'm not alone in that. So would you mind talking a bit more about that and how you got to that point?
Um, well, like I said, I've had a lot that's happened to me. I mean, I a lot of the bullying was pretty serious. I mean, I would cry myself to sleep
Yeah.
at night, and even in the fifth grade, there was an eighth grader and some high schoolers in a truck, and I was riding my bike, and they ran me off the road, and the eighth grader got out, and he had a high powered pellet gun that shot lead BBs, and he shot me in the leg.
Mm.
And it was actually about an inch or so from my main artery
Mm.
in my leg. And uh, that caused it hurt, and obviously, and the crazy thing is, it was 3 months before the police even interviewed me about it. And um, and then eventually, as years went on, that eighth grader, I wound up working with him,
Mm.
and he remembered who I was, and he apologized. He goes, "Hey man, what I did to you back then, I'm sorry." And we became friends. We shook it out,
Mm.
and I think a lot of it is just because of my upbringing. I was born Methodist and Christian. I admit I'm not the best Christian. I'm not the greatest. I do stuff that's questionable, but I try to have good morals. My sister's actually a Methodist reverend,
Mm.
pastor, and she inspires me a lot. She's my younger sister, but I'm very much inspired by her and what she's gone through over the years, and how she's kept her faith. And so I try to do the same. And but at the same time, I kind of owe it to my training, my martial arts, especially my primary. I've had multiple instructors, which I can go into in a little bit, but my primary instructor, Bill Ratzlaff, I've been with him off and on for 30 years now,
Wow.
and uh, he really instilled in me how to be a professional not just a martial artist, but a professional martial artist. All the tenets that martial arts teaches: integrity, honor, respect, and he pushed that into me, and I tried to instill that out. And in my opinion, part of that is also forgiveness,
Mm.
and just moving on, and they may not respect me, but I try to respect them, and yeah. So
All right. So you said you started formally in eighth grade. Is that what I heard?
no, I wanted to, but like I said, uh, I wasn't able to get into martial arts until college.
Wow. Okay. So that's a long time to wait. You talk about being
Yeah,
four and being, you know, interested and wanting to do this,
yeah,
and it taking until, I mean, that's 14, 15, 16 years of waiting. That's a long time.
yeah.
What
I
what
started
did you end up doing? Go ahead. Sorry.
I started buying. I was doing everything I could to get in the martial arts. As I started working, once I became a teenager, I bought myself a small TV, had a built-in VCR,
Hmm.
and and I started going, and I was buying karate movies. I have about you can't see it, but I have about well over 300 movies,
Wow.
and a big bulk of them are martial arts movies and
Oh, that's cool.
documentaries. And
What were some of the early ones that you picked up that you watched, I'm sure, over and over and over again?
um well, like I said, I was a big fan of the Van Damme movies, Bloodsport, all those, No Retreat, No Surrender. Cynthia Rothrock,
Mm.
I was a big fan of hers. Um, uh, the Tiger Claw, Lauren Avedon,
Mm-hmm.
just all those people. And then, of course, when the '90s came around, I really became a fan of Jeff Speakman. I just
Yeah.
loved his Kenpo, so just a bunch of movies, Adolph Lundgren movies,
Yeah.
just you name it, martial arts. I was into it,
Right.
and
So college comes around. What was it? What was it about college? Like, was there a club on campus, or did you go to a different area? How did it happen?
yeah, I went to a community college that was just 30 miles from where I grew up. And I majored in art and graphic design at that time.
Hmm.
And back then, it didn't matter what your major was, you had to take physical education.
Mm.
And because of that, most colleges had martial arts or some form of self defense. And Barton County Community College in Great Bend, Kansas, they had Mudu Kwan Tong Sudo,
Hmm.
Taekwondo, and it was taught by Master Joe Felke. And it was through Kim's Academy of Taekwondo out of Wichita, Kansas.
Hmm.
And so I immediately started training. I enrolled in that for my class, and eventually got up to my yellow belt green stripe in that. I took a
Hmm.
couple semesters, but I became friends with this one guy, Larry Churchill, who I'm still friends with today. And this is back in August of 1993. And he told me, he goes, "Hey, I heard about this third degree black belt in Okinawan karate, and he teaches weapons." And he was just as crazy about martial arts as me. And I'm like, "Oh, okay, I got to check this guy out." And so I found out where he was located, and I immediately went to his school. And he was teaching Okinawan Shorin-ryu Kenshin Kan, which is through Fusei Kisei out of Okinawa.
Hmm.
And uh, I enrolled that day. So I was doing about 6 hours of karate every week,
Hmm.
three times a week, and then about 3 hours of Tong Sudo, and for uh, way over a year, about a year and a half, and I just loved it, and I loved also how Sensei Ratzlaff, he's now a seventh degree black belt, but I loved how he also taught the history, and it really made me appreciate what I was learning more.
Hmm.
We learned about the grandmasters,
Hmm.
going all the way back to the past.
And this makes sense because so much of what happens in martial arts films is, I mean, there are only a handful of plots in martial arts movies, right? It's there's always some competition or some vendetta. Somebody killed so and so you end up with a lot of value in the history and the lineage and the who came and my master and all that. So you kind of you almost had that before you had the physical skills, that appreciation, I would imagine.
I did. It was I just really loved it because I'm a big historian. I love the
Mhm.
history of any type of martial art. It doesn't matter what type. I love the history. I love the stories. And Matsumura Sato is very prestigious because it's named after Soken Bushi Matsumura. And he was the chief bodyguard for the 17th, 18th, and 19th kings of Okinawa. So,
Mhm.
very prestigious history. And so it made me proud. It instilled that pride into me, and I've been to schools where there's been fourth, fifth degree black belts, and they didn't even know the name of the style. They just go, "Oh, we do taekwondo or karate," but they didn't know the actual name of the style, and that takes a lot from me when you don't even know that.
Yeah.
And um, so uh, I was training off and on, got to my fifth Q green belt in Kenshinkan. And then I had to move with college and everything else. And Sensei Ratzlaff moved, and we kind of broke away for a while. And then I did Songham Taekwondo. I enrolled in Hays, Kansas at Fort Hays State University, and they had a martial arts team. And that was Songham Taekwondo. So I did that, got up to a yellow belt. Did it for a year, and I competed, went to some tournaments, stuff like that. And then
It doesn't sound
eventually,
like you had a good time with the tournaments.
I
The way you
did.
said that.
I had a
Yeah.
great time in tournaments. I enjoyed it. And then eventually moved to Manhattan, Kansas, and started getting into security and law enforcement. Doing a lot of that work. Working for a major security firm, and at Kansas State University there in Manhattan, Kansas, they had Aikido. It was like Seidokan Aikido. And so I did that for a while. And until I started really working, and my work kind of overtook my training, and I wasn't able to train as much. And then eventually wound up moving back to Larned and started working at the state mental hospital, and Sensei Ratzlaff moved back, and I got back with him, and I learned then that we were no longer associated with Kenshinkan. He broke away mainly because Kenshinkan was a mixture of it was created by Kisei, and it was a mixture of the Matsumura Saito and the Shorinji-ryu that he was also a black belt in. And he kept saying that he was teaching Shorin-ryu Matsumura Saito when actually he wasn't. He was teaching his own style. And we started looking at old 8mm footage of Hohan Soken, who also trained Kisei, and realized that just how much the katas has changed. And he was renaming the katas like Ananku International, Kusanku International, what have you. And what they actually were was the Shotokan version. And his reasoning behind it was, well, by having our kata the same, it's easier to judge in tournaments because we look the same. Well, we didn't like that. That's what made us special, the Matsumura Saito, is we were a diamond in the rough. We wasn't like everybody else. We were different. And so we sought out Grandmaster Steve Warren out of Texas. And he was a black belt, got his black belt through Hohan Soken back in the early 70s, and Fusei Kisei. And he had his style, Shorin-ryu Matsumura Wakido-kai, and we started training with him. And he wound up then getting certified in Israeli Haganah under Mike Lee Kinerik. And he was like the 20th person in the U.S. certified to teach Haganah. And he integrated the fighting aspects into the Matsumura Saito, and it blended perfectly because a lot of the things that was going on in the Haganah we also did in Matsumura Saito, and we did in our kata and our bonkai, and it blended well. It was a beautiful blend, and it enhanced our fighting strategies, and we really liked that. And so we did that, and until about 3 or 4 years ago, we kind of broke away from Warren, and Sensei Ratzlaff got reacquainted with his original. Sensei Ratzlaff learned Kenshinkan when he was in the Marines in Hawaii back in the 80s. And he got associated with his original instructor, David Lockhart. And Sensei Lockhart got acquainted with Ronald Lindsay out of Bastrop, Texas. And Sensei Lindsay They were going back and forth, and Sensei Lindsay introduced Lockhart to Grandmaster Seisan Kinjo, who's out of Okinawa. And
Okay,
now we're
I want to jump in for a moment because
sure,
you're for a couple of reasons. One, it's really clear that the lineage, the history is important to you. You mentioned history is important to you.
yeah,
You value that. And question: do you have like a cheat sheet of all this, or do you have this memorized?
pretty much memorized.
Okay, that's really impressive.
Yeah.
But what I'm really interested in too is because while some of these names have meaning to me, admittedly, most of them don't,
Mm.
right? But I'm interested in what it was like for you during these changes. Most of us, if we've trained somewhere for, seems to be 10 to 15 years, somewhere in there, something happens, right? A school splits, a high ranked student goes off and takes a crew, or the school that the instructor that your instructor was under moves to somebody else. And there are a lot of different reasons. Some of them are positive, some of them are not so. But because you went through this a few times, that the school you were under was no longer affiliated with, what was that like? How did you feel, not as a historian, not as someone who, if you can separate it, not as someone who would look and say, technical accuracy here, but as a student, as someone who was participating in the culture of that school when these breaks happened? What was that like for you?
Well, I just went with the flow. I was like, hey, I was always dedicated to Sensei Ratzlaff. I even when I was a white belt, if he would have a demonstration or something, I would draw up posters to advertise. I was always trying to help promote the school. I trying to be a loyal student and show my respect and my appreciation and that I was with him no matter what. But a lot of those changes too, it did affect my training. Like uh, when I got my fifth Q green belt, when I left and then came back, um, some of the because of the changes, some of the katas had changed.
Mhm.
Um, my bow uh, bow my first bow kata for instance, I was flip flopped on what I was
Mm,
supposed to know, because my bow kata that I knew was now the second bow kata,
mhm.
and the second bow kata was now the first. So I was reversed and
It's
backwards.
the
So
whole
and
Pinyon
and
Showdown, Pinyon Nidan thing all over again.
and then some of the kata changed too because we realized, hey, this was changed by
Mhm.
Kisei and this and that, and this is how it was originally done. So then I had to learn those changes, subtle changes. They wasn't too bad, but I still had to learn them, and relearn. And so every now and then that would kind of hamper and everything else,
Mhm.
and put a stick in it. And with life and everything coming into be, it caused issues. Right now, at the moment, I'm a fourth degree black belt,
Mhm.
but in reality, I could be a sixth degree. I've been a fourth degree now for 10 years. Um, Back in 2011, I got injured on the job,
Mm.
and as of this June, I've had 9 shoulder surgeries.
What
And
happened?
it was faulty equipment opening a
Oh,
door, and I had multiple tears and a
oh,
bicep tendon tear and in my shoulder, and had to have joint replacement. Wound up being allergic to the nickel,
oh,
and had to replace
brutal.
that with titanium. And the doctor couldn't figure it out. I actually Googled the symptoms and figured out I was allergic to the nickel. And even then, he denied it. He said, "No, you wear nickel, you don't break out." Well, wearing it and having your bloodstream's two different things. And so, because of all that, I haven't been able to promote. So hopefully maybe next year I'll be able to try to test for my fifth.
Yeah.
But yeah, basically I just went with the flow. Like I said, I respect Sensei and I respect his decisions, and I love what I was doing. So I said, hey, this is the way it is. So I just went with it.
Okay. So what's training with I'm assuming you're doing something, what's training
Yeah.
with a shoulder replacement? Like, we have plenty of people on with knee and hip replacements. We don't get a lot of shoulder replacements.
Well, my range of motion's bad. I am kind of partially disabled. I mean, this is as high as I could get my arm up right now, and can't even do a proper head block. But I mean, I'd have my surgery, and 2 days later, I was teaching class, just wearing the sling. And
Wait, you teach? Okay,
yeah, I
you're
teach.
just sliding that in there.
Yeah, I teach.
All right, we keep going, but we got to come back to that.
I'm definitely old school. Uh, Yeah, when I now live in Oklahoma, north of Tulsa and Bartlesville, and moved here 10 years ago, and I got offered the chance to buy into a martial arts franchise, and I didn't know that it was basically a belt factory McDojo, and it had a bad reputation. It was going bankrupt,
Ooh.
and it drug me under. Um,
Does that?
the
I don't want to put you in hot water.
I don't have bad things to say about the franchise. The CEOs were amazing. It was just
does that organization still exist?
they do, and
Okay.
but it was just the former instructors, and the former instructors actually lied to the CEOs too. The CEOs didn't realize how bad it was. So I won't name their names or where I was located,
we'll try to keep things positive.
I was very fortunate. It was funny because I about 2 or 3 weeks after taking over the school, I was teaching, and this gentleman walks in, and he goes, I've been watching you," and he goes, "I want to tell you that your students look like crap." and I was like, but he's like, but I'm not saying that now. He goes, "I know you're new." He goes, "I know you've only been here a couple weeks," and he goes, "In the couple weeks that you've been here, I've already seen a huge improvement." And he stuck out his hand. He goes, "It's nice to have a real martial artist here in town for a change." And that was Soke Gary Dill, Grandmaster Gary Dill of Jeet Kune Do.
He's been on the show.
And I, being a historian, I knew who he was, that he trained with. I was like, oh my goodness, there's a guy that trained with Bruce Lee right here in Oklahoma. I'm like, and I've trained with him off and on a few times.
Nice guy.
And a great guy, and smoked a few stogies with him. He's a big cigar smoker.
He is passionate about those cigars.
And I really respect him a lot. And he lives just 5 miles from me. So
next time you see him, please give him my best.
I will. And it meant a lot to me. And after a year, I broke away from that franchise. And I'm back to being old school. I teach out of my garage, and just a few students here and there, and yeah.
Nice. All right. Let's go back to the whole teaching thing, right? Because you've spoken so passionately about your love for the martial arts in so many different ways, right? The training, the history, the lineage, accuracy is something that's clearly important to you. When did teaching start, and how did that start? And was that by design or accident? Like, just where's that happen in your journey?
Well, again, I owe that to Sensei Ratzlaff. He would, having students and stuff, he would try to focus on everybody, and so he instilled in all of his students teaching. When I was like a blue, back then we had, it was white belt. And then we had 3 blue belts, 3 green belts, 3 brown belts, and then our black.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we switched over to Aikido Kai, we were white, yellow, purple, and then 3 green, 3 brown, black. And then now we're back to the original white, blue, brown, green, brown, black. But like when I was on my second and third belts, we'd get a new white belt, and he'd be like, "Hey, could you teach them Fukagari Itch, the first kata?" And so I would take the student and try to teach them the first kata, and then he would come back to make sure that they were getting the pattern and everything. And so we started teaching relatively right away after we got a couple ranks up, teaching lower belts, helping to teach. And then as time went on, when I got my brown belt, I got into the black belt club. And with the black belt club, we were required to have perfect attendance. And if for some reason we missed a class, we would have to do a private lesson to make that up. We were doing demonstrations, we were doing different stuff. And because of that, we were required to be better than everyone else. And so we were helping teach then as well. And then when I got my black belt, I took an extra, I was required to get my instructor certification. I had to take an extra, it was either 10 or 12 hours to get my instructor certification. And it was based on how to teach properly. And Sensei would do different scenarios, like he would pretend to be a out of control young kid. Oh, I don't want to do this, and then acting like a little kid. And we had to, okay, this is how I would handle this as an instructor and stuff, and how to do that. And our black belt test was a nightmare. It still gives me nightmares to this day. Sensei Bill, he decided to incorporate a 12 hours of hell, technically 14 hours for our black belt test. And it's like 8 months or 8 weeks of Marine Corps basic training in 12 hours. And
how did you feel about that?
I loved it. It made me appreciate my black belt more because I know I earned it. I got up at 4:30 in the morning and I ran, I don't know how many miles, carrying a 60-pound duffel bag, doing push-ups and sit-ups in the river, and just different stuff, psychologically, to wear me down. And it just made me appreciate earning my black belt that much more. And mine was the first one that we recorded. We got about an hour and 15 minutes worth of footage recording the promotion. And I showed that to Sensei Warren, Grandmaster Warren, and Grandmaster Warren goes, "You're an idiot." He goes, "If I would have had to do that for my black belt test, I would have told Soken and Kisei to kiss off." he goes, "You're crazy what you did." But
do you have your students do stuff like that?
Honestly, I have yet to promote anybody to black belt.
Okay. Would you have them do that?
I would.
Talk about that. This is a subject that's come up on the show a bit, and if you don't mind,
sure,
just say a little bit more.
Well, like I said, it really helps you to appreciate it. Now, the way Sensei Ratzlaff does it is, if you've already been in the military, you don't have to do that 12-hour because you've already done that. It's that psychological thing. And for younger kids, younger students, he doesn't go quite that long. It's a few hours, but it really tests to see what you're made of, and how to push yourself beyond the limit and pass. Because if you're in a real fight, you might have to do that. You never know how far you're going to have to push yourself. You might have to push yourself to do things that normally you wouldn't want to do and wouldn't think of doing, just to survive. So it helps you to appreciate that. And I definitely would. I've helped with him when he's promoted some other students to black belt. I've gone and I've helped with their promotion to be because the way he does it too is he has one black belt volunteer to be the emotional support, going, "Hey, you got this," and trying to push them on, while the others is going, "Come on, maggot, get down, give me 50," and so you got the Jekyll and Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde thing going back and forth here, and it really kind of gets you. But like I said, I was exhausted, but and even if we wouldn't have done it, that black belt would have meant still the world to me. But knowing what I went through, it just, oh yeah, I know I earned it.
Right on. Okay. So what I'm hearing, if we kind of go back to the beginning and we put together these points that are your timeline, your martial arts timeline, we've got a pretty good idea of who you are, and clearly your passion for training. And I would say, I think I want to use even a different word, immersing yourself, right? People use the word lifestyle in different ways. And I think a lot of times when people think about lifestyle, they think about something that is all encompassing. That's not quite how I see it. I think of it as something that connects to all the different parts of your life. And it sounds like that is a good way to describe you in your relationship to martial arts. You're a student, you're an instructor, you have connections to people, you've made it, at least part of your profession. And I know you've got some other things going on. So first, would you agree with that? Do you live a martial arts lifestyle as you see it?
Yes, I try. I try to live a martial arts professional lifestyle. I try to lead a life that is inspiring to others. I try to instill in my students, try to be a role model to them. Admittedly, I don't train. I haven't been training like I should, but it's because of a lot of things that's going on in my life right now. My shoulder issues. I don't sleep very much. I average about 2 to 3 hours of sleep a day.
Ooh.
And because of my shoulder,
well,
I
good
wake
job for
up.
being coherent. I don't know that
Yeah.
I would be coherent after 2 or 3 hours once, let alone consistently.
Yeah, and I'm also back in college.
Oh.
I got back into college in 2017 because of my shoulder issues and stuff. I've kind of lost my passion for law enforcement. I've been doing it for 26 years, and with my shoulder issues, I am a kind of a security risk, and I wanted something that actually has financial security and pays good, because my last security job, I was getting paid the very same amount that I got paid 20 years ago. And so I got back into college and decided to go into a field that I know nothing about, and that's sports. I Unless it's martial arts or WWE wrestling, I don't know much about sports, but it's a growing field. So I got into sports management, and I figured if anything, maybe I could learn some new skills that would also
Sure.
transfer over to help me with my karate business and my school. And now, and my family has no idea about this. I got my master's degree last year, and they think I stopped, but I'm actually at the moment going for my PhD.
Oh, that's awesome.
And
Cool.
I'm going to get a PhD in philosophy of education, and I hope to be a college professor and teach
Oh, I love it.
sports. So I'm very busy with all that. So usually when I'm training, it's when I'm teaching, and I'm
You're
not.
not alone. There are a lot of
You know,
people for whom the majority of their training is when they're in the front of the room.
yeah, and I'm
I can
trying.
say that too. I mean, that's
I'm
most of my training is when other people are
yeah,
doing what I tell them.
yeah. I'm trying to work in a little bit more training and trying to, because I really do want to promote and everything. So I'm trying to work in on that and everything. So um, but it's I still got a lot going on. So and and I do a lot of research, being a writer and everything. I write books and publish books, so that takes a lot of work too. So
Well, let's talk
so
about that.
sure.
Let's talk about the books. Um, First off, what are you writing? How long have you been writing? What and you know what? First question: why writing? Because writing a book is probably the least effective way to convert time into money.
Yeah.
Right? So
Yeah.
why did you want to write books?
Um, because it's a way to do the research, but also
Mm.
keep that knowledge out there to the people,
So we're going
that
back to
want.
your love of history.
Yeah, love of history. I started back in 1999.
Mhm.
Well, even before that, I was compiling a lot of information on martial arts, and I got to thinking, man, I ought to put this into a book and create like an encyclopedia of martial arts. And so I started doing a Chinese martial arts encyclopedia.
Mm.
And I had about 365 Chinese martial arts styles and about 110 weapons. And
Make a style of the day, style of the year calendar out of that.
yeah, and I had an old brother word processor. So I would have to type and figure out, okay, this is where I want my margin in. And then because being an artist, I would freehand pictures
Mm.
of stylists doing the certain poses for that particular style, like a
Oh, cool.
key pose. And as I continued doing that, word started getting out, and more martial artists of those styles started sending me actual pictures.
Mm.
So I rewrote that book about 3 or 4 times from 1999 all the way up to about 2015 when I first published it. And I self published. And it's an amazing book, has great pictures. And and so I did that, and then a lot of my students, they were like, "You ought to write a memoir," because I
Mm.
told them what I've gone through. I've gone through a lot. I even I've had a lot go on in my life. I had an ex girlfriend, and there's actually a documentary. It's called the Dolly Madison um, Murders. It happened in Great Bend, Kansas, and it was in a bakery, and she was 24 at the time, and there's a 79-year-old woman, and they were brutally murdered, and they were found by the delivery driver. And my
I'm sorry, I
ex-girlfriend,
want to make sure I heard you correctly. You're saying you have an ex girlfriend that was murdered?
yeah,
I'm so sorry.
she was nearly the only thing holding her head
God, Nathan.
in place
Oh,
was her spinal cord.
Jesus.
And I saw her just 3 days prior to the murder, and we were no longer together, but we were friends. I was
This
married.
was still someone you knew and
I was
cared
married
for.
at the time, and to this day, it's still a cold case. There's a composite drawing, and like I said, it's on Tubi. There's a documentary of it, and
Okay.
everything, and even on YouTube. But I always wondered, because there were signs that she fought back. And I was like,
Mm.
and I've always wondered what would have happened if she had martial arts skills. Would she have been murdered?
Mm.
And stuff. And so I wrote a memoir and did that. And then I wrote a book on bullying and child abuse and domestic violence and the national statistics, and I talk about 15 famous people that were murdered. So it's kind of an inspirational book.
Mm.
And then I did a book. It's about 500 pages, the first 2 years of the Ultimate Fighting Championship. And it's written like an encyclopedia from A to Z. And I'm hoping to do a volume series all the way up to the present. So it's going to be multiple books. I did a book on verbal de-escalation. I'm a verbal judo instructor.
Okay. I don't know
And
what that is. I mean, I can infer what that is, but you're saying it like it's a codified thing that I'm unaware of.
This Mr. Thomas, back in the 1980s, he wrote Verbal Judo, and it's a way verbal de-escalation techniques, and it's been taught to law enforcement, mental health people all over the world. But the thing is, it's not really politically correct. They use terms like mentally retarded and stuff. So I rewrote the book to make it politically correct. And then it also talks about how to talk to people in general. Well, you can't do that. For example, if you have, say, an adult that's 30 years old, but they have the mindset of, say, a 10-year-old, well, you don't talk to them like a 30-year-old. You have to talk to them like a 10-year-old. You have to talk to them where they can understand. And so my verbal Aikido book is you blend with the aggression and then redirect it to a mutual outcome. And I include disability awareness, and I talk about multiple disabilities and how to talk to those people depending on their disability. And most recently, I've written an encyclopedia. I now have, as of a couple weeks ago, the first 2 volumes. And between the 2 books, it's over 1,000 pages. And volume 1, it's extreme martial arts, the fighting styles from around the world. And it's anything martial arts related. Volume 1, I just talk about the chronological history of the martial arts. And I go back to 30,000 BCE when the first weapons were created, all the way up to 2023. And the volume 2 is nothing but A. And
you're going to be at this a while, my friend.
It's 492 pages.
It's just A.
Yeah, and it's about 110 styles, but then it has key figures of the martial arts. I talk about like George Alexander and techniques. Like even my current book right now, now I'm working on volume B, and I'm on like page 90, and Aaron Bank, not Aaron Banks, which he will also be in the book, but Aaron Bank, who was the person that created the U.S. Special Forces. So anything that's martial arts related, key events that happened in time, stuff. And so people are now affectionately calling it the Encyclopedia Britannica of the martial arts, because this is going to be the most extensive martial arts encyclopedia ever created.
Sounds it. I mean, page count alone, I think it's hard to argue that.
I'm expecting it's going to be at least 15 volumes, if not more, from A to Z. So it's going to take several years to get it all out.
How long have you been working on it?
Since the early mid 90s. So compiling all this info, I've compiled over 3,000. I have a bookshelf, and I have manila folders, and from A to Z of different styles, and I have approximately 3,000 styles.
Wow. Uh, are there's a tongue-in-cheek question, like a sarcastic question, but there I guess there's a it's true at the same time. What are you doing to live a really long time to make sure you get this done? I
I
mean,
don't.
obviously you're more focused on it now, so I don't expect it's going to take a long time. But even if you're spending a year a book, which is not out of the question,
Right.
a year per book is still going to take you at least a decade
Yeah.
more,
Yeah.
probably
And
two.
I'm 48 years old now, so I'm getting up there. But
I mean, you got time, but it's you don't have time to waste. I guess is what I'm
right,
hearing.
right, right. And
Wow.
I just try to take time here and there. At the moment, it's kind of pathetic. I have a master's degree, and yet I'm barely making $1 over minimum wage. I'm a substitute teacher,
Hmm.
but because I'm a substitute teacher, I get time where I can just sit down, and
Yeah.
so I take my laptop with me to classes, and I sit and I'm typing during classes, and so
There you go.
anytime I get a little free time, I plug in, but I just I I've written my books aren't just martial arts related.
Hmm.
They're anything that inspires me. Like I said, I did that one over bullying. I was inspired to do it because um, uh, I'm friends with this girl. Her name's Jessica Hickman,
Hmm.
and she lives in the UK,
Hmm.
in Cardiff, and she's blind. She had a tumor, and she had surgery and made her go blind.
Hmm.
But she's Hoist Gracie's goddaughter,
Hmm.
and she's his highest ranking female. And she still trains in Brazilian Gracie Jiu Jitsu and everything. And she had a friend that was she knew a girl that was 13, and she committed what's called bullycide,
Yeah.
when you're bullied and you commit suicide. And she asked me if I could do something, and that's what led me to create my book on bullying. I have a book right now. I learned in sports that there's not many colleges that teach um, terrorism prevention in sports. And there's only like one or two colleges where you can major in sports
Mm.
management and take a course on terrorism prevention. So I wrote a 17 chapter book. It's almost 500 pages on terrorism prevention in sports, and I'm trying to get that published right now. And I'm hoping that some colleges will take it and maybe
Yeah.
create a course and use that as an instructional manual. So
I hope
I
so.
I do anything that inspires me. I write.
Yeah, and that's
I
you
love
know
writing.
I, I can hear that, right? And to the audience, if you're not watching this, you can't see it. But this is the segment. You've been very matter of fact through our conversation. As a historian who appreciates facts and figures,
Yeah.
one would expect to be. But as you're talking about this, you're smiling. It's clear there's a lot of emotion here for you.
Yeah.
That you're passionate about this, and I love that. Where can people find these books? Are any of them available currently?
Yeah, they're all on Amazon. Pretty
Okay.
much everyone's self-published,
Okay,
other
I
than my
think we have
mom.
links. Did you send us links to
I
your
might have.
Amazon?
I might
Okay,
have. I'm
I
not
think
sure.
we do. If not, let's make sure we get that in the show notes for
Yeah,
folks.
all you have to do is type in Nathan Chlumsky on Amazon, and they'll all come up.
Okay.
Um, uh, but they're all pretty much at the moment through Amazon. My memoirs actually through Austin McCauley Publishing.
Okay.
But yeah, they're all up there. And there's 7 books.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah. So something like that now. So yeah. But that's just
mm.
I just love getting the info out there. I love sharing the knowledge.
You
I
are a teacher. You are a teacher in the true form of the word. You have information and you're finding ways to connect it and then give it back. And I think that
yeah.
that's great.
Well,
And
I love the stories that go with different martial arts
Mm.
styles, different myths. It's just so fun to read about and learn, and um, uh, hear about things. And this person can catch an arrow with his bare hands and stuff, and look into it and read it. It's just so much fun, and learning about that. And I want to keep that knowledge out there, and writing is a way. And you're right. I'm not making much off of it. I've sold only just a handful of books of each book. I mean, it's a special market,
Yeah,
and
it takes time and it's difficult,
it
and that's
does.
something that we've faced. We've put out a number of books, and it's interesting how you'll put out a handful of anything, right? Musicians will say this about songs, authors say this about books, artists say this about their paintings or their sculptures. It's never the ones that they think are going to be the best, and you get just this one or two out of however many that one sells well. We've got a couple like that. It's like, I had a meeting yesterday. That's the book that's selling now. Why
Yeah,
is that book selling? We don't know. It just is.
yeah,
We just say things.
absolutely, absolutely, yeah.
All right. If people want to get a hold of you, social media, email, website, stuff like that you want to share.
Yeah, I'm not on too many sites. I'm on LinkedIn,
Mm-hmm.
Nathan Chlumsky. I'm also on Facebook, Nathan Chlumsky, and that's pretty much it. I don't do too much social media.
Okay.
I have a Twitter account, but I haven't been on it in probably a year and a half. It
Okay.
just I just don't get into it. But Facebook's pretty much the biggest one that I'm on,
Okay.
and I communicate through. They're welcome to look me up, and I love talking to people. I love sharing my story, and and meeting with people, and yeah.
Mm, great. Well, before I hand it to you to close us out, I just want to remind the audience, whistlekickmartialartsradio.com, all the links, the things that we talked about today will be available for there. There'll be a transcript, might not be a day of release, but it goes up shortly after. And hopefully you'll support us. Go to whistlekick.com, check out all the things that we're doing. So, Sensei Nathan, it's your responsibility, I guess, to close us out here. We've talked about a lot of different things. So, how do you want to leave this episode with the audience?
Um, I just want to say, no matter what you're going through, people tell you you're not going to be able to do this. Don't believe them. I was told by many, you're never going to be a martial arts. You're never going to be a black belt. You're never going to accomplish this. And it gave me the drive to prove them wrong. And not only have I proven them wrong, I've gone past. Not only did I get my black belt, but I've got multiple black belts. I'm a high-ranking black belt. I'm a three-time martial arts Hall of Fame inductee under Action Martial Arts magazine. My picture was on the Thomas Reuter billboard in New York City in Times Square for 24 hours for being professional of the year in martial arts instruction for Who's Who, Strathmore Worldwide, and people were probably going, "Who in the world is that?" But I use that for your fire to push yourself, and also appreciate where you come from, appreciate your lineage. Um, Try to learn about it, be proud of it, and try to learn on that, and share what you know to others, and keep that part alive, as well as just the training and the evolving of the techniques. Also keep that, because like I said, I've been to schools where people have taught martial arts and they didn't even know the name of the style. They taught good stuff, but um, you lose a lot when you don't even know what the style's name is or the lineage. So keep that going.